But I also thought, like, what's more powerful than my voice, but like hundreds of voices. And, you know, over the last 8 years, we now have had over 900 women published stories with us. And we have almost 50,000 followers. That's really cool. And like, so my whole point, my whole kind of reason for doing this was, one, to change perceptions of women in technology, two, to kind of be a place and a resource for parents and teachers of how to keep girls in STEM. And then three, like, how can men be allies?
Firsts. What does it mean to be first? Sometimes it's crossing the finish line, claiming the gold medal, and basking in the glory of victory. Other times, it's an act of courage, a trailblazer smashing barriers and paving the way for others to follow. And occasionally, it's a choice. Welcome to Voices of Leadership, my podcast that tells the stories of women who are redefining success and thriving on the edge of change. Dinah Davis is no stranger to firsts. She's built her career and her life on a series of them. As a mathematician and cryptographer, she stood out as one of the few women in a field dominated by men. She was one of the first to code Bluetooth technology. She holds a variety of patents, which means she was the first to create something, and she's even experienced her first retirement. Dinah is an accomplished technology leader and founder of Code Like a Girl, a platform for women in technology that has evolved into a supportive community where women can find mentorship, resources, and support, because being first is never easy, but it's a little less lonely when others are walking beside you. One of her first jobs was at BlackBerry, a company that revolutionized mobile communications with its QWERTY keyboard and first iteration of the modern-day smartphone. If you haven't heard of them, look it up, because you wouldn't be able to text or snap someone today without its pioneering technology. Hi, Dinah. Welcome to our very first in-studio video podcast episode.
Thank you. I think this might be the first time I do a podcast, like, in person, in studio. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be way more fun this way.
Me too. And the chairs are so comfortable, which is fantastic. I have to say, I don't normally do this. I usually record online, not just because most of our guests don't live locally, but also as an independent podcaster, it's more cost effective to get video clips in order to promote our episodes. So, but today's different. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this opportunity because we get to sit here and have a chance as an independent podcaster to record sort of like the big kids do. And I'm thrilled that Bespoke Productions and the Voice of Leadership podcast have partnered with Onward Media to sort of make video and in-studio podcasting accessible to creators like me. So it's really exciting. And I thank you very much for being our first guest in this new format.
No problem.
I assume that being first is something you're quite familiar with.
Yes.
So as a mathematician who has experience in the tech, cryptology and startup space. Cryptography, thank you, space. Can you tell us about some of your firsts?
I think like one of my most notable firsts was way back in university. So I went to the University of Lethbridge in Alberta. And an interesting thing about that is when I went, the ratio of men to women was like 1 to 6. So there was like 6 women for every guy at the university. Mostly it was a school where you went to become a teacher, which is what I did. But it turned out I liked math better than other people's children. So I didn't become a math teacher. But in my first kind of senior level computer science course, I walked into the room. And so remember, 7-to-1 women to guys. I walked into this computer science class. There's about 60 people in the class, and 2 of us were women. 2. So like this was like not something I was used to just because of how it was like, but I said to myself, okay, like by the end of this first class, I'm going to make a friend because I like to do my assignments with other people. So I remember turning around at the end of the class and looking at these guys that were sitting behind me. And I was just like, hi, I'm Dinah. And they were like, oh my God, the girl's talking to us.
Girl.
And I still know some of those people today. One of them actually works in the region here, which is kind of crazy since we went to school in Alberta. But Yeah, that was my first of being a woman in tech, I guess.
There's a lot of progress, I hope, that is made, but I know we still have a long way to go.
Yes.
Not only in tech, but in many other industries as well. So this might be a small detail to you, but I'm kind of dying to ask you because you have a long list of accomplishments. And I find it fascinating that you hold several patents. Can you explain to us why we need patents and how the process of applying for one and receiving a patent works?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about my experience with patents at BlackBerry.
Yes.
Which I think is probably a vastly different experience than anyone else doing patents.
I didn't know that.
So in the early 2000s, when I was working at BlackBerry, they were a patent machine. So their goal was to create as many patents as possible around their technology to protect it, basically. And so anything we thought was even remotely novel, we would apply for a patent. And it really was a factory. Now, you did have to have something novel. It did have to be patentable. But there was an army of lawyers that worked with the technologists, like with the software developers, to just usher that process through. So if anybody has like done a patent like independently, it's a lot of work. Like you have to write it, you have the idea, you have to write it up, or you have to pay lawyers a lot of money. At BlackBerry, you had an idea and then it had various stages. So you would write it up, but then the lawyers would work with you and you would have a 30-minute conversation and then they would submit it. But it would take years. Years for anything to happen, like in the order of 5 to 10 years for a patent to go all the way through and be issued. And they had all kinds of incentives. The inventor's banquet was the glory of all glories. Oh. So if you had a patent be accepted, you got to go to it, and it was like definitely the fanciest thing. But it was really fun and it was really cool. And the way I got onto the first patent was I actually found a cryptographic flaw in the algorithm. Mm-hmm. So I was really proud of that one. That one wasn't like, there was so many patents that were like email on a mobile device.
Yes.
And those kind of came before my time. So it was a little harder.
Right.
When I got there.
Had to be more nuanced a little bit?
It had to be more nuanced. But like, yeah, I was working on the most prolific patenting team at BlackBerry, which was crypto dev. We did everything security for BlackBerry except for the very low level OS stuff. So
like my BlackBerry.
Yeah. Okay. So in for some context here, I have like 20 patents in my career. My coworkers have like 150 or 200. See, what I'm saying? Like, I did not get I got there after the on a mobile device, you know,
where you could patent everything every day.
Where you could patent everything because no one had patented it on a mobile device yet.
Yes.
So yeah, mine were a little harder that way, but
is it yours forever though?
Well, I mean, patents hold for 20 years.
That's pretty cool.
And then anyone can use them. So like, sadly.
Oh, are we getting to that point?
Yeah, we are.
We don't want to date ourselves, but we're getting to that point.
No, we really would be, because I started working for BlackBerry in 2004, and that very first patent was something I worked on within my first 6 months. So yeah, it's probably starting to be open to the public to use now.
Well, we'll have to look that up. I'm sure I can find that somewhere.
It's possible.
It's possible. Okay. I hope you enjoyed our discussion about the intricacies of the patent process as much as I did. There's something endlessly fascinating about the creativity it takes to be awarded one. I have to admit, I have a mild obsession with patents. They're like little trophies for the imagination. Next, our conversation takes an entirely different turn, one that touches on something many of us wrestle with, the evolution of a career and the meaning of retirement. I love the term Dinah uses, her first retirement. It's such a perfect reflection of the times we live in. Gone are the days of one job, one company, one career trajectory for life. Dinah's story is one of ambition and endurance, starting as a co-op student to her time at BlackBerry and playing a pivotal role in the success of Arctic Wolf. 20 years of a relentless pace. without a break. So how do you know when it's time to stop, or at least pause? Dinah shares the signs she couldn't ignore and what led her to embrace her first retirement. So I guess I didn't mention this, but this is our first time meeting in person. Mm-hmm. I feel like I know you because you spoke at a tech talk here at the Catalyst Commons, and I was inspired by your story. And I was also fascinated by your take on the concept of first retirement. Okay. Can you share with us a little bit about what that term means to you and what your transition into this first retirement has been like?
So I spent 20 years working in tech. I did co-op before I started my first job in 2004 at BlackBerry. And I worked in very intense technology. Like BlackBerry was a amazing place to work, but extremely stressful. Mm-hmm. But I got to ride that amazing like hockey stick curve that BlackBerry did, right? Starting in 2004, I was there before there was 1 million BlackBerry users. Mm-hmm. And I left in 2011 and things were starting on internally not looking good, but to the outside world. But at that point, there's probably 300, 400 million people using BlackBerries. So it's pretty cool. And I never took a break my whole career longer than 3 weeks. And I'm telling you, maternity leave does not count.
No, it's not a break. Who says that's a break?
I did take that one maternity leave, but that does not count. And in 2015, I started working for Arctic Wolf. And it was at the time a 35-person company. And I ran all of their R&D team. It was only 15 people. But over the next 5 years, I rode that hockey stick. And that's the ride I was looking for again. I didn't get to be part of any of the stocks with BlackBerry. I showed up too late for that. And we built this amazing development team. We built an amazing product. And within 5 years, we'd unicorned, which for listeners who maybe don't know,
live in Waterloo,
what that means is you're a privately held company that's worth over $1 billion within the first 10 years of creation of the company. And so we hit that mark after the company was created for 7 years. So I was there after the first 3 years. And then I held a few different roles after that and chose to leave in 2023, January 2023.
So fairly recent.
Yes, this January will be 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be 2 years. And, fortunately, I was able to sell some of my stock on the secondary market, enabling me to retire from that corporate life. And because in those, basically 19, 20 years of working, I'd never taken more than 3 weeks off. I was unbelievably burnt out.
Yes, I can imagine.
Just so burnt out and so done with corporate politics and all of that stuff. So it took me about a year to recover from that burnout, basically. And then in this last year, I've really been able to work on my core passion, which is my publication called Code Like a Girl. And I actually started that back in 2016. So we've been going for, almost, I can't math right now. 8 years. 8 years. There we go.
I can do that math.
8 years.
So you were doing that simultaneously. Wow. No
I was doing that.
Yes,
I was doing that simultaneously. I did hand it off to somebody when I became a VP at Arctic Wolf for about 2 years. I had somebody else running it. And now it's just back to all me. So I'm fortunate enough to, be able to choose what I want to work on right now. And so I do that and I mentor people. I'm part of many mentoring programs to help mentor Canadian cybersecurity startups and all kinds of women and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's maybe first retirement or I don't know. Second act or
that's what I call it. That's what I call podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And I want to talk about Code Like a Girl and all the other things you're doing. But when you stopped, what was that first couple of months like? Even if you're burnt out, was it strange to not be so busy?
Really strange. I I made myself take a month off, and then I thought it was good. And so I started doing a whole bunch of other stuff, like working with some companies and like I just picked up a lot of that kind of advisory work. And about 3-4 months after that, I just realized how I wasn't enjoying any of it.
Interesting.
And I really had to take a hard look at myself, and I realized that like I was still really burnt out and I needed to do only the things that were going to matter to me. And then last year at the beginning of September, I decided that was going to be like the year of me being healthy. So like caveat, in my 30s, along with my career, I discovered I had an eating disorder.
Oh no, I'm so
And
sorry.
so I went through very like intense recovery on that. And, you know, I am recovered from that. So when I say I focus on health, I do not mean
Go to the gym and run 5 miles?
or try to lose weight. Like that's ridiculous.
Yes.
I really wanted to focus holistically on myself. And I didn't like that, like trying to like go on a hike with my husband, I was out of breath. And that was crazy to me because I'd been doing CrossFit for 7 years.
Wow. That's a whole nother good for you.
7-8 years.
That's impressive.
But it wasn't.
There's not a lot of cardio in CrossFit though.
Like it, yeah, it's good for strength training,
Yes, it
which,
is.
you know, turns out you really, really need,
Yes.
especially
At
in
this
these
stage.
perimenopausal
Yes,
years.
the perimenopause years. Note to this is perimenopause.
Yes. So I decided I had just gotten back into swimming, which is something I did as a teenager, and I started Pilates, and I really just focused on like only doing the things that I really loved. So Code Like a Girl and some of the mentoring, and prioritizing my time more on that physical and emotional well-being. Yeah. So in the last year, I've done 2 open water swim competitions.
Wow.
One in Barbados last year and one in Curacao this October.
Before you hear the rest of our conversation, there's something that needs to be highlighted. Alongside her quote-unquote day job, her demanding trailblazing career, Dinah has spent over a decade building something extraordinary, Code Like a Girl. It started as a personal project to challenge the stereotypes women face in STEM, but like all great ideas, it grew. Today, Code Like a Girl is a thriving community that showcases career opportunities available in technology to girls with mathematical aptitude, and is a place where women can access resources, support, and mentorship to excel in their careers. Dinah shares what motivated her to launch this initiative, how it evolved, and why she's excited about its current direction. So you mentioned Code Like a Girl, which is something I noticed right away because if you Google you, that's one of the things that come up. And I thought it was such a great initiative. And I was curious how you started it. I mean, you talked a little bit about doing it simultaneously, which I find fascinating, but what was your motivation, I guess? Was it your experiences or was it more sort of also giving back to the next generation, I guess?
No, it was like deeply rooted in my experience. So, like I said, I was at BlackBerry for the first 8 years of my career. And while I was there, I was like, yeah, I'm a woman, but I'm going to pretend I'm not a woman. Like, I just didn't want that to be an issue. And in the early 2000s, right, like there was maybe 10% of us in the workforce as software developers. So I wasn't going to be like the feminist and bring things up because I didn't want it to impact my career. And on top of that, I ended up having an amazing team. Like the guys that I worked with, my bosses, like in that, direct team, I never once felt discriminated against. Possibly in the larger BlackBerry, like there was still some issues there, but never in that team. And when I left BlackBerry in 2011, just because I could really see the writing on the wall that it was over. And I felt like for my career, I needed to leave for it to flourish. And I got headhunted out. And it was the first time I left. I mean, BlackBerry was my first real job outside of co-op. So I didn't even really consider that it would be different. someplace else that
Right.
I wouldn't be supported someplace else.
Oh,
And it turned out that the person I was working for was horrible, really. He was a bully. He was a misogynist. And probably within about 10 months, my self-esteem was and self-confidence was fairly destroyed.
I'm so sorry.
It wasn't fun.
No,
it wasn't
and
fun.
it's sad that this isn't the first time I've heard this on
No.
this podcast.
Yes,
so.
right. So at the time, my daughter was about 5 years old. And, I realized a few things. One, I couldn't stay in that environment. And two, if a company wanted me to work for them, they were going to have to be okay with me talking about what it was really like to be a woman in tech. And so that's when I found a new role. The next company I went to was much more supportive. And I started blogging online. And a lot of it in the early days was focused actually on, how to get girls in STEM. Because and how to keep them in STEM. Because my daughter was 5, right? And so I knew that I had probably 5 to 6 years to really get her to love STEM and try and hold her loving it through those teen years. Through high school.
It's hard. It's very hard
but just so you know, success.
Good for you.
Success. She's currently in grade 11.
Congratulations.
Taking all 4 sciences.
Fantastic.
Plus math. So we're success on that side of it. And then I think around 2015, I started writing a little bit more about what it was like to be a woman in tech in my journey. And then I was I was doing all of this writing on Medium, the platform Medium.
I don't know much about that. I found it interesting. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah. So if you don't know, it's kind of like a long form. I used to say a long form Twitter, but Twitter is just so horrible now.
Is it like a precursor to Substack in some ways?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's a lot. It's a lot like that.
Okay.
So anyway, you would get more views or more people could see your stuff if it was as part of a publication on their platform.
Okay.
But there was there's only 1 or 2 women in tech publications on the platform, and they didn't want my stuff. So then I was like,
sad.
yeah, but this in typical Dinah fashion. I then go, well, how hard is it to create a publication? And then
I love that. I'm like that too. How hard can it be to make a podcast?
Right, exactly. I've thought
than
that.
I thought.
I've thought that, but then I've decided not to do that. Yeah.
You could just be podcast guest.
Maybe because I still own this publication.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah, couple clicks. That's all it took. And now I've owned this thing for 8 years. But I also thought what's more powerful than my voice, but hundreds of voices. And over the last 8 years, we now have had over 900 women published stories with us. In the last year and a half, we probably have close to 150 active women publishing with us. And we have almost 50,000 followers of the publication now. And on a monthly basis, we're getting hundreds of thousands of views. And so that's really cool. And so my whole point, my whole kind of reason for doing this was 1, to change perceptions of women in technology, 2, to kind of be a place and a resource for parents and teachers of how to keep girls in STEM. And then 3, how can men be allies? And in the early days, almost all the stories were about being a woman in tech. And today that's completely changed. I'm so happy. It's so different. Very few stories are about being a woman in tech, maybe 5% of them. And the rest are either technical articles or articles about leadership, of career growth, that kind of thing, which is just amazing. I love seeing that. That is what I do now. I read and review. Probably we're publishing about 60 to 70 articles a month.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, congratulations. It sounds like you have shifted the narrative then over the years, if the content has changed.
Yes. Well, I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that. And I think, the women in tech movement also got a lot of push when the Me Too movement happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of diversity stuff started really coming out. But what's really concerning to me right now is to see some of that diversity stuff get clawed back. Like Walmart just recently announced that they're like ending most of their diversity initiatives, which is crazy.
It's not a good sign when a big company does it. No,
not a good sign.
I did read that too.
And I mean, the more I see it, the more I feel like a lot of stuff is diversity theater.
Yes.
And so there's all these like great diversity. If you can't
taglines.
Reader, you cannot see me quoting myself, but like putting in quotes, but like diversity programs that are meant to help the company look good. Mm. And I think many people in the company think they are doing good, but all you have to do is look at the C-level.
Yes.
Okay, what is the C-level comprised of? If it's all white men, then obviously their diversity programs are pretty much all diversity theater.
Yes.
Because they don't actually believe it in the core of the leadership. And if they don't believe it in the core of the leadership, then, it's just, it is not actually there.
No, and if it's only for lower entry level, let's say, then it's not really a diversity and equity program at all.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, because then there's the whole power struggle that comes into play with that.
Right.
Yes. So you mentioned teachers and parents. Is that sort of your target then with Code Like a Girl, is education or?
No, and I would say that part's probably way more faded off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing now is just like providing a place for women to write about what they do, and helping amplify their voices to do that. That's just more where the article submissions have been coming from lately, and I think that's great. Like the more women are actually publishing technical stories, like how they solved this problem, how they coded it up, the better, because then the next generation is going to come looking for these same kind of stories to learn from, and they're going to have these role models to see it. So there's still a few stories here and there about kids in tech, and maybe also because my child's more grown up, it's a little less of a focus for me.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
And so then what's next for Code Like a Girl?
You know what? I've actually, the whole time I've done it, I have not really purposefully gone and said what's next. It's more like, what I'm going to keep doing is really trying to support my authors the best way I can, helping them. We spend a lot of time on articles, polishing the article.
Oh, so you help with the editing and sort of finalization?
Yeah, like really doing a lot of polishing on the story and making it impactful, and working on really like normal things like the title of the story and how is that going to grab people's attention enough? Is the formatting, is it all right? And because part of it too is like these women want to be heard. And so if the writing quality isn't great, then it's not going to be read by as many people. Right. Their voice isn't going to get amplified in the same way. So I spend kind of a ridiculous amount of time.
You're now an editor, which you didn't think you'd ever be, right?
Just so you have no idea. You have no idea. And when I was in elementary school, I needed, like, when I think I was in grade 8 or grade 9, I had to go like for remedial tutoring for my English and grammar. And like, so if you'd asked like, that 14-year-old Dinah, you're going to run a publication and you're going to help people write better, I would have been like, you are nuts. Like, why would I do that? I can't spell and I don't do grammar. I still can't spell. Okay. This is so totally true. And Grammarly is a great thing.
Best friend. Yes. I don't spell that well
Grammarly is
either,
my best friend.
Yes.
But I do know now, after editing that many stories and then seeing which ones do well and which ones don't, I do have a good sense of what makes a good story.
Yes.
And how to present that story as a good story, right? And we'll let Grammarly help with the spelling and
not about
and the
commas.
grammar.
It's sometimes it's about how you tell the story.
Yes.
It's the same thing with the audio. How do you tell the story?
Yes.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yes.
So what does life look like for Dinah now, a couple of years into her first retirement? The answer might surprise you. It involves a lot of driving and a profound awareness of the ticking clock that is parenthood. Dinah reflects on the fleeting years we have with our teenagers before they head off into the world. She's learned to redefine what quality time means with her teen. She'll take the garbage time any day, the car rides and the mundane errands, because those moments, she's discovered, often hold the most meaning. But just when you think you've got Dinah figured out, she casually drops this into the conversation. She was one of the first people to work on the code for Bluetooth for the Canadian government. Bluetooth, that small, unassuming technology that connects our devices, often without our permission. Not surprisingly, she discovered that as groundbreaking as it was, Bluetooth wasn't entirely secure. So you mentioned Code Like a Girl and your mentorship. What else are you spending your time on these days? Not just in work, but what else?
So like one of the big things I wanted to be able to do when I quit my corporate world working in 2 years ago was spend time with my daughter. Because when I quit, she was in halfway through grade 9, and I knew I only had 3.5 more years of her being around. And so I do spend a silly amount of time driving her around. If you don't have a teenager yet, and if you do, you'll know this, but like driving them around is sometimes when you get the best conversations. So that really like that downtime, that's not special moments or whatever. My husband was telling me, I can't remember who said this quote, but like, forget like special moments. Give me all the garbage time.
Yes.
Forget about quality time. Give me the garbage time. So that time, like from, picking up from swim practice to go to home, and you get 5 minutes and all of a sudden they're just like, tell you everything.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I have a 19-year-old, and we always said those drives, he played very high, he still plays high level hockey. So the drives were longer, and more important conversations happened in the car than elsewhere. And now I'm at the grade 9 level. I have a set of twins who are in grade 9. And so we almost appreciate it more because we know that once they get their license, that's, I think, what we miss the most. It was nice that he could drive to the 10 o'clock practice, but we miss the time in the car.
I know we're on that bubble. She has her learners.
That's a tough time too. That's a whole different tough
At the same time,
because you can't talk in the car when they're driving. There's no talking.
No,
they have to drive.
But at the same time, I'm not really going to be that upset when she can drive herself to 5 a.m. practices 3 times a week.
There are some benefits, but
that part I'll be okay with.
I agree. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be flexible too, and choosing to spend the time driving them around has been some of the best choices we've made because you do build a very strong relationship.
Yeah, and that was stuff that was actually really hard for me to do when I was working.
Yes.
Because I had a really
especially
big
corporate, I'm sure. Because
I had a really big job. I was a VP of a crazily growing startup, and so there was a lot of sacrifices that I made, and I don't think I made too many sacrifices. I always made it to the important things, and I was fortunate enough that the company I worked for was like they were okay with that, right? Like making sure, but. My parents did way more driving for us. And, there was some things that I missed. And I just feel like these 4 years are a gift. We're halfway through, and they've definitely been a gift. It's like, I don't really know what I'll fully do with myself when she goes to university, but I feel like I'm not going to go there.
No, you got to leave it. You just got to leave it.
I'm going to leave that for later, and then I'll have to deal with my emptiness syndrome then.
That's right. Oh, yeah, it's a whole different transition.
Yes.
But, you've practiced one. Let's not do another one right away. No, I don't think that's a good idea. So what do you think the future holds for cryptography? It is sort of an emerging technology or a trend that you find particularly that you're excited about?
Okay, so, maybe a bit of background there. So my master's degree was in cryptography, which is, if you don't know,
mine's in history. It's the same thing, right?
So it's basically the study of algorithms that will allow you to secure, protect, or sign things, basically. And so cryptography is a lot of the mathematics behind how things are encrypted today, or even as simple as Bluetooth has cryptography inside of it. And the reason I bring up Bluetooth is that back in, I think it was 2000, nope, even further back, the late 90s, when I did my very first co-op term. I did it for the Canadian government, the CSE, which is kind of like the NSA for Canada. And what I was tasked with was building the Bluetooth algorithm from white paper using C++. So I was to write this algorithm up for their cryptographers so that they could evaluate it as one of the candidates for the next version of AES. And AES is just a cryptographic standard that, people will use all the time. And NIST, or the U.S. government as part of NIST, decides which baseline algorithm that AES is. And so Bluetooth was evaluated as part of that. And I coded it up, and no one had heard of Bluetooth before that. And now it's like everybody in the world has heard of Bluetooth. And I was one of the first people to actually write it up as a cryptograph. That's actually kind of crazy. I was probably one of the first people, hundreds of people, that actually coded it in a computer language.
That's
right?
so fascinating.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
It's really unsecure. So just so you know,
I can figure that out. Yes, my phone connects to Bluetooth without me asking. So I'm thinking it's not very secure.
Yeah, so it's not secure as a cryptographic algorithm for exchanging secure communication, but it turns out it had this other crazy purpose. Mm-hmm. So when things come down to it, then you never really know, what is going to happen in the future of things. And the next big step and I don't keep that up to date in the crypto world anymore because I morphed into this tech career, which turned out to be a bit more about cybersecurity and software development. And cryptography is just like a very slim piece of the cybersecurity whole pile of things.
So tell me what's next in cybersecurity then, what you think, if you'd like.
Oh, well, there's so many things. So,
or what are you excited about?
AI is that next. It's so gross that I just said AI because it's like the hype word right now, but it is real. Mm-hmm. It is real because we're all actually starting to use it in a real way. People have talked about AI for a long, long time. And some of the interesting things I'm seeing from a cybersecurity perspective is how are we going to manage AI, right? How are we making sure that people aren't just, the constraints of AI with all the hallucinations and stuff like that. So there's some companies that I've been working with that are working on, how do you evaluate an AI model to see if it's actually, got inherent biases in it, right? Because the models are only as good as the data that also goes into it, and the data is often quite biased. So there's some cool companies out there that are working on how you evaluate an AI model as to how well it performs from a bias perspective, could somebody attack it perspective, a PII perspective, so personal identifiable information. This is a huge problem, right? You don't want your doctor just putting your stuff into ChatGPT to help it diagnose your issue, and now you don't know who all has access to your own personal information. So there's some really cool companies out there that are looking at that. So I think as cliche as saying AI is, it's not just saying, AI is going to solve everything. It's how are we going to put the guardrails on AI to, get the use of it out, because that, that cat is out of the bag. Like, AI is never going back in the bag. That is out of the bag. And, there have been, very significant shifts in technology over the last 30 years. And I think AI is one of them. So like, for a couple examples of other major shifts that happened, Apple introducing UI, right? So back in the late 70s, early 80s, I can't remember because I don't have notes in front of me. They introduced this concept of like a user interface. And before that, everyone was just command line typing in. Well, that changed our world, right? Like, it changed everything, and it didn't all change at once. But like, without that innovation back then, like, the way we even play with our phones is a totally different thing. A lot of people will give credit to Apple for smartphones, but we all know, if we're here from Waterloo, that BlackBerry really invented that.
Yes.
And I will give to iPhone that and Apple that they perfected the keyboardless screen, like that really, and the App Store. But so mobile phones changed everything as well, like how accessible we are, how we're connected, in ways that we could just never have imagined before, right? And AI is going to do the same thing. So, things that just, we wouldn't even have thought are possible in 20 years, we're going to be like, how did they not
think of that sooner?
Like if you watch TV, if you watch shows or something that are based in the 90s and you realize they have no way to contact that person. No. Like, there's no cell phone. What are they, like, what is happening? And I grew up that way, so I should know that
right.
That is how it
so
was.
Long
but
ago,
it's so crazy.
Yes, that we did that. I miss the keyboard, by the way. I think a lot of us do.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. We evolve, but I do think that, AI is one of those cats that are out of the bag, like the UI, like the smartphone, that are going to fundamentally change how we interact with each other, how we interact with the world, how we do our jobs, in ways that we don't see yet. And so because of that, we do have to be careful. Like, how do we put guardrails on that? How do we, this is really interesting. Another podcast that I love, it's called The AI Fix. Anyway, they were one of the hosts from that did a really interesting thought experiment on, decision making, AI decision making, and the trolley car experiments. Have you ever heard of this? It's a psychological problem that people like to think. So you're in a trolley and you're going down a hill, and the brakes are broken. And there is, 5 people, if you stay on the track right where you are, there's 5 people that are going to die. Or you can flip a lever and you can hit one person and the one person will die. Oh. This is a horrible experiment, okay? It's a horrible, it's a thought experiment, okay? So as humans, we go, okay, well, we have to flip this switch, right? Because, right. Okay, now what if that one person's your spouse?
Right.
Right? Okay, so he just did this whole thing where he talked to AI with this experiment.
Oh,
okay, so and he put these theories in, and of course on the first one, the AI was like, well, yes, we must divert and go hit the one person because that's less bad. Mm-hmm. But then he was like, well, what if it was 5 lobsters or 1 lobster? Which I know this sounds ridiculous, but when it asked the AI said, well, I actually don't know the value of a lobster life.
Wow.
So I'm, because there's no inherent value, I will react by doing nothing.
Oh.
And so the AI would choose to kill 5 lobsters instead of 1 lobster, which, okay, that's fine. But that right there, that was a really interesting thought experiment for me, because think about AI is helping us drive cars.
Right. What else doesn't it value?
What else doesn't it value, or it doesn't know the value of?
Right.
And then it chooses inaction. Mm-hmm. Right. So
wow, what an interesting experiment.
Yeah. So it was last week's last week's AI Fix, I think it's called, by Graham Cluley. Anyway,
I'll look it up. We'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. I can send you a link to it
That'd be great.
for the show notes. But so I think that's where, there's some further thought on how we use AI, how we put guardrails on it, where we use it. And obviously government legislation is going to be way behind, just like everything else.
Yes.
But yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I love those stories, even they were slightly disturbing, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's actually a great way to look at AI. We don't think of it as not being able to answer a question. So it's a very good example of that. And we, if you're just a regular layperson not involved in the space, using it, not recognizing that it can actually not answer the question, it's good for us to know that.
Right. Yeah. Especially when it's put in charge of things that, can greatly impact, our humanity itself. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being our very first guest.
No worries.
I enjoyed being in the studio. It's quite a lot of fun. I do prefer interviewing face to face, so when the option's available, I'm excited that we now have that option. So,
yes, welcome back to the post-COVID world.
Exactly.
So where we can do things in person again. Yay!
And I look forward to watching your many retirements throughout your life. I'm sure you're going to do fascinating things in the future.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Voices of Leadership is part of the Bespoke Productions Hub network of independent podcasters. If you are interested in partnering with us as a sponsor, or if you have a podcast of your own, please visit bespokeproductionshub.com for more information. This episode is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Amy Schluter.